Hi people, and hello my Chili Con Carnage crew. It's Chili here for another episode of Live Listen Erase, the live podcast. And of course, it would not be unprofessional of me to wonder if my audio levels are right or wrong again, because, I'm really good at figuring out this technological stuff. So of course, I am tuning into myself, just making sure I've got the audio levels all right, and I can hear myself perfectly well. So that's working well. Now, for those curious and have joined in wondering, where is the Def Leppard episode? We have had to cancel that episode, unfortunately, very last minute. I know, I'm terribly sorry about that. Look, due to unforeseen circumstances, we just can't do the episode today. We do plan to reschedule that episode for a later date, so make sure to tune in for further notifications on our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those ones, to check for the update when that one will be coming out, because I hopefully can get to doing that next week with Tobner. Vinny and me are going to be teaming up for that episode, and I really am loving that one. Vinny is a great bloke. I really love chatting to him over at Instagram about stuff, and to be able to discuss the points that was made, I guess, for the Def Leppard one. It's going to be an interesting episode, I think. Probably it's going to be like this one here. So I just wanted to get a quick one. There's a bit of music news just to cover, of course, because there's always music news. Now, music, new releases, what's out there? There's not a lot, to be perfectly honest. I think the Smashing Pumpkins have released their newest one, Autumn or Atum, I don't know. I think it's Autumn, Act 2. That one should be out probably tomorrow because, America. And I'm keen to see what Act 2 is going to be like. You can check out my review for Act 1 in regards to my thoughts on that one. Bit of a mixed bag, but it grew on me more I listened to it. The other interesting one is Uriah Heep, of course, releasing their newest album, asking for Chaos and Colour. Just had to read that right. So that's interesting. I will probably do a review on that one. I do have a review that's planned to come out maybe Sunday for the Newfound Glory album that came out last week, so I'll definitely be doing that one. And I'll also have another episode coming out in the next couple of days as well on 1137 and their newest album, which also dropped last week. And just a special shout out as well to David. Thank you very much for recommending this one to cover me for the very last minute here on Metallica. David and me have been discussing various things, and in regards to the show and stuff like that, and they're an incredible band, and I've listened to their newest album, most of it, and it's very good. If you guys know, for example, 65 Days of Static, lo-fi instrumental stuff, bands like that in particular, 65 Days of Static were famous for being on the No Man's Sky soundtrack, probably the only good thing on release, but they did an incredible job there with that music. And 1137 have just, with that album, they've released an incredible album, probably their best works to date, I will say. But I will cover all of that in a future review, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. Now, on the front of last week as well, we were discussing future episodes for, what's going to come out in Live Listen Erased. Good news on that part. I've reached out to a few bands for interviews, and we have maybe 3 bands that'll be coming onto the show, maybe some more even, for interviews is what I'm trying to say. Now, those bands I'm keen to have a chat with and, get them on the show. So keep an eye out again, because 1137's on the list, Afghan Hayes as well, and Charlie Smith. I am very keen to be, putting them on the show if they're happy to do so. It'd be really sick to have them be able to be a part of this show. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And of course, there are the shorts that I was discussing last week, so a bit of stride with that one for notes and stuff like that, but we'll get around to making the first episode for that shortly, hopefully. No pun intended. The other news as well when it came to, I guess, the music industry was Triple J's hottest songs of the year. Now, for those of you who aren't Australian, for my American fans in particular, Triple J is a radio station in Australia. And when it comes to Australia Day, which was yesterday, it does a list for of the top 200, I think, songs of the year, and then it plays it on the radio live the whole day. So it's kind of a big thing in Australia to see who the top 200 acts are of the year, and I have great news on that front there. Number 136, Coal Makes Me Come by The Chaser. So if you're unfamiliar with The Chaser, shame on you. But they're basically a parody news group, and they got big scenes years ago when they were making their show, when they infiltrated the APEC or whatever it was meeting, which was the highest security meeting for all the leaders of the world, and they did it with a renter. I think they rented a limo, they stuck Canadian flags on it, and one of them was dressed as Bin Laden. So you can imagine, oops, I hope that word didn't censor me out, but anyway, they were dressed as a person. And yeah, Coal Makes Me Come is a song that they basically got the former PM of Australia. They got all his words that he says and made it into a short song, little dance song, and it's fantastic. I've done a reaction to it. Make sure to check that out. The song itself is so funny. It's incredible. So the fact that it got voted there, awesome. Thanks Australia for doing that. Because that takes crowd participation. So love that fact. Another one, and I found this news just too adorable. Radiohead crowd left red-faced after applauding 3-minute guitar tuning, mistaking it for a new song. Ooh, that's just cute. Tuning your guitar, and it must be Radiohead. That's it can say a lot about the fans, it can say a lot about the band and the music they write. I don't know what to say. I do love Radiohead, so that's a bit of a red-faced moment. I think the biggest news to come out from the week, though, was Pantera's removal from, Monster AM Rock Festival or something like that in Germany. For those who weren't aware, Pantera obviously have reunited and are doing some stuff, and I think they've got Zakk Wylde on guitars. I can't remember the drummer, but yeah, they are touring again. Fantastic news. And unfortunately, they were taken away from the German festival because of the history regarding Phil Anselmo making certain gestures that let's just say, naughty man with a mustache used to make in the day. And regarding his history, was taken off the bill. This is unfortunate news. I'm sure a lot of German fans will be upset. Look, there's no way to safely say that he shouldn't be removed for that thing. I don't know what to say. I think this stems back from 10 years ago. I was reading up a Rolling Stone article about it. They were talking about it in 2016. So I don't know if it was recently he's done it or not since, but this might be an older thing that they're talking about and is kind of held against him. Obviously, Deutschland has their highly political views when it comes to these sort of things, So yes, that's rather unfortunate, but that's the news, I guess, in regards to that. So yeah, it's how it is. So for today's episode, of course, we're going to focus on Metallica. You know the band coming out, Metallica, the greatest metal band ever, the one that you're all here to hear me gloat on about, and just my love for Metallica. It continues on ever so much. And of course, Metallica is just the greatest metal band ever. They are just so easily accessible, I guess. It was like the first band that I discovered, by myself, and went out and listened to, bought their CDs and all that stuff. So I do hold a lot of fond memories with them in regards to their music. Now, before we go too far, of course, as to Metallica being the greatest metal band ever, who are part of, the thrash big four, I thought, well, what about the other metal bands on the list? There's probably about 50 more that you could mention without going too far into it. But, I came up with a short list and some short notes, first of all. Many people are going to point out, of course, the other members on the big four list, so let's go straight into them, first of all. Slayer. No, they're too heavy for non-metal heads. They do write awesome music, of course. For anyone who loves metal, you're going to love Slayer, most likely. But, you know, for someone who you want to introduce to metal, you're not going to choose Slayer straight away. You can't just go, hey, listen to Angel of Death, yeah, this is a fantastic. Raining Blood, absolutely incredible. They're just going to, you know, go, what the hell is this noise? I'm never listening to metal again. So if you want people to get into metal, you're not going to pump Slayer in their eardrums and wait for them to bleed out of every orifice you can imagine. You know, it's just not going to happen. Good music, but as far as Slayer goes, no. I think for the simplicity of them, you can't put Slayer up there with the greatest metal bands. They are up there, sorry. They're not the greatest, is what I'm saying. Megadeth, alright, Megadeth, Dave Mustaine, you know, but Megadeth kind of wouldn't exist without Metallica kicking him out. Yeah, he probably would have wrote the music with Metallica and stuff like that. That's, who knows, an alternative universe that the MCU might dive into one day. I mean, they did cover it in X-Men to a degree, so maybe, who knows. But, you know, that's the biggest argument, I guess you could say. Yeah, Dave Mustaine, people, what about him? Dave Mustaine wrote everything Metallica wrote. Yeah, he says that a lot. I remember saying in an interview where Dave Mustaine said, I wrote everything from Kill 'Em all the solos, and they used it all. That's just not true, because I remember Seek and Destroy actually borrowed from Saxon for one of their solos. So shut up. I know you wrote everything ever because you're like the Gene Simmons of heavy metal, or thrash metal I should say. You did everything ever when it comes to metal. Fantastic. I do love Megadeth, of course, but Dave, you are such a whiny bitch at times. Anthrax? Nah, not even close. Yeah, just no. I mean, as far as the big four go, I know they're not on the list of a lot of people who love thrash metal. I just don't. I've never gotten into them. I never could. They're kind of like the court jesters of the big four. They're funny. They've got good tunes, no doubt about it, but I just can never take them too seriously. What else is there? Okay, besides the big four, what about other metal bands? Black Sabbath. Yeah, look. Black Sabbath created metal. Without Black Sabbath, there would probably be no metal. Or at least there'd be a very delayed version of it. But, yeah, for a band that created metal and then exploded after a couple of years, then reformed and, well, not really reformed, they, you know, went on with Dio and stuff, and wrote some good music as well, incredible music. They really suffered throughout the 80s. They had so many lineup changes, it's not funny. And it made the band suffer a lot, you know. Tony Iommi wanted to do a solo thing, and the execs were like, nah, not going to happen. You know, then a lot of their stuff from the 80s just suffered from production, and, you know, they just, the studio won't put enough money into them, and, you know, for various reasons, justly so, I guess. You know, Tony Martin did a great job when he joined the band. Of course, I've covered that in a retro review, you know, with Headless Cross. And good news for that, looks like they're actually going to have some of their music coming out soon from the Tony Martin era on Spotify and other platforms. So, yay, good news, yes. Alright, so while Black Sabbath created metal, Metallica really perfected it. Yeah, come at me with that one. What about Iron Maiden? Yeah, Iron Maiden did some good stuff. Number of the Beast, you know, Power Slave and stuff like that. But as far as it goes, they've kind of dragged their feet ever since I'd say since somewhere in time. You know, after that, they just kind of fall into obscurity almost. Yeah, they wrote a couple of albums, they had a reshuffle of lineups, and then they got Bruce Dickinson back in the band, which was a really good era, I feel, but it never really didn't really catapult them back into the limelight. They've always been there. They've always recorded new albums, and yes, I will cover them in an episode shortly for worst to best, and I'll actually recover them probably 6 months down the track to see if that's changed. But as far as Iron Maiden for best, no, I couldn't agree with that one. What about Pantera, for example? Yeah, Pantera are interesting. They had a really good run, but it's a very short run. People will say, oh, all their albums are perfect. Clearly, you never heard of the 80s material they released. But I think Pantera is more of an idealistic band that saw the writing on the wall for the style that they were writing and decided to shift their style to correct themselves, and their trajectory landed them right where they needed to be. So yeah, Pantera is a good band, of course, one of the best metal bands ever, but I wouldn't call them the best metal band. Again, you could also say the same thing about Slayer in regards to you wouldn't really introduce them to a non-metalhead. So back that one off again. Slipknot's probably the closest one I can say, but you could probably say the same thing again, where they're a bit too heavy during certain parts of their stuff, and probably not too user-friendly for non-metalheads. Very good band, but maybe the closest one I could mention from this list. But give them another 10 years, they might just make that kind of impact. They're definitely up there. What about Ghost? I'm joking. I just wanted to say that to trigger all the metalheads. Ghost start metal. Yeah, I know, but I just wanted to trigger you. So, the only other one that I could really think of, what about Motorhead? Well, we can't compete with God here, so that's a bit unfair. Now, other than that, what else could we just say about Metallica, hey? I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things to say about them. As I mentioned, they're the band that got me into metal. They were, I guess, my gateway band. And I think that's a perfect description of Metallica. There's so many people I know who enjoy metal because they discovered Metallica. Because they found Metallica at the right time when they were young, and it was just perfect for them. So, hats off for those who discovered Metallica and discovered all the bands that you know now love all the time. So absolutely cool there. The other great way to describe them, they had a very simple logo, just Metallica, M's inside and stuff like that. Even the little Metallica star, the M star, just absolutely great. Metallica, great name as well for the band, simple enough, and just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Metallica. Also, what helps the band is the duo James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. James Hetfield is hella funny. You can just scour YouTube and just find a lot of videos of James just talking to reporters and nailing it. He just can come up with stuff on the fly real quick, real smart fella, really fast smeller, I should say, and you'll know why in a minute. But yeah, the guy can just he just has a silver tongue. That's what I'm saying. There's interviews where people are like, oh, yeah, how did you get to be so good? And he's like, oh, yeah, with minutes of practice. Like, the guy is funny. If you don't believe me, check out James Hetfield Funny Moments, YouTube it. It's just next level. He is a charismatic frontman, and that's what you really need with a band, of course. Any singer has to be very charismatic and charming and stuff like that. So, yeah, there'd probably be a few people saying, oh, he's not charming, but alrighty then. Now, what about Lars? I know he cops a lot of flack in the metal community. Oh, man, with Lars, he's not a drummer. He can barely drum. He's not even the best drummer in Metallica. Got that Beatles joke going with him. So, look, Lars, I think... Yeah, look, they're much better drummers than Lars out there in the metal world, but he does well. He does really well. And, you can hear it a lot in their material that, even up until this recent single, for example, what is it, even with Luxley Turner and other songs like the recent one. Sorry, I've just had an absolute mind blank regarding it. But yeah, the drumming is really tight. It's really fantastic in some sections there. Screaming Suicide is the song I was just trying to think of. Sorry, just had to quickly look off screen. But yeah, there's some tight drumming moments there. And he cops a lot of flack. I think that's because the guy's got a huge ego on him, and you need that in a band. You need someone to be this huge ego and driving force between them. And those two, the James and Lars combination, really know how to write some tunes. So that's the main thing. Obviously, I can't defend the Lars and Napster saga. That stuff is just shit. But moving on from that part, that's a dark history regarding the Metallica band timeline. Yeah, he did a bad move there, and I'm guessing in hindsight he'd probably choose to do things differently. Especially when you got the money that he does. Major argument there. So, yeah, fantastic people there. Kirk Hammett, absolutely incredible guitarist. A bit wire heavy, especially in recent years, but still an incredible guitarist. Fantastic shredder, and absolutely unmovable. With regards to the bassists, we'll go a bit more into the depth of them later, but Robert Trujillo, of course, is on bass at the moment. Has been now for coming up 20 odd years, ever since Saint Anger, which was 2003, so coming up to 20 years this year. Robert Trujillo, of course, had history regarding working with Ozzy Osbourne, Suicidal Tendencies, and a few other bands. And, of course, he's got his style that he brings to the mix, with the band. And Jason Newsted was a fantastic bassist, and he brought his style to the band, which I think was needed very much so at that time. He knew how to play his style with a pick, and that was him. And I think he just did very well throughout his tenure, and he handled it very professionally. When you hear him on his other projects after Metallica, like Echo Brain and stuff like that, the guy really is this gem in the rough or something like that. He is real one-of-a-kind material. He's pure rock, the guy. And, hopefully some great things come his way, because he's fantastic. Absolutely incredible. Now, of course, as I mentioned, they're part of the Big Four, which is a massive thing in history of rock. Big Four being the thrash Big Four of the 80s, Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, and, of course, Metallica. Now we go into the numbers of the band Metallica here. They're one of the first metal bands to have over 1 billion streams worldwide on Enter Sandman, which is a very noble feat, absolutely incredible regarding the number of plays that comes down to it. That's 1 billion plays. Wow. Yeah, that's just nuts. Especially when you consider what kind of background music they are. They're not pop. They aren't pop. So, you're not going to have the numbers that the pop fans are going to have. But anyway, then we look back in their history here. 125 million records sold worldwide, roughly speaking. They are the highest selling metal artist in history. And you're not going to be able to recreate those numbers. Not with the way that the record industry is now. Obviously, you're not really shifting records. You're not shifting units. Not especially with streaming the way it is. I can't even recall the last time I bought a CD or a record because of streaming. I really should, but at the same time, there's arguments, and that's a different thing. So throw that out there. Now, what do I say, these numbers? It's an indication, people say, record sales, so what? We're talking about the quality of music here. But it's a pretty good indication of popularity. Obviously, others are enjoying this music to the extent that they're going to go out and spend money and listen to the music. So, I don't entirely, and record sales can be inflated and whatever, but, at the end of the day, obviously 125 million plus minus, let's say 20% or whatever, that's still a huge amount of people that are listening to Metallica. 1 billion streams, for example. And yes, it's a great way to get an indication of how they are performing. Obviously people like their music and they keep coming back and they listen to them. So it's an indication. It's not the clear-cut method to understand the music itself, but it's an idea, I guess. The other thing as well, of course, we can't go any further without mentioning Black Album, which went 16 times platinum in America by itself. The highest selling heavy metal record in history. Again, all these historic moments with Metallica. And, at the end of the day, you can say that, Metallica sold this many records, and they had all these streams, and at the end of it, it's a dick-waving contest. Yeah, okay, I guess it is a dick-waving contest, but, and you could probably also say, it's not about the size of the dick, it's about, the way you use it. Yeah, fair enough, but, if this many people are going back to that kind of dick, then it must be good dick that people are enjoying. I've got to stop using that analogy. But obviously, numbers are an idea. engage the music off that. It's just an idea of where it is. Obviously, your musical taste will factor into it, but hell, the critics have lauded over these records for years, and I don't think that's about to stop. The Black Album is timeless, almost. So it's the first album that I bought from Metallica, that's for sure. Black Album. Actually, I bought that twice because the first copy was stolen. But Metallica's Black Album was what got me into metal. If it wasn't for Metallica's Black Album, I don't know what I'd be listening to. Because after Metallica's Black Album, I ventured into their past stuff. I checked in, Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, and all that stuff, and loved what I heard, and kept playing more and more like it. Just, found friends who enjoyed their music, discussed more bands with them, and discovered a lot of other bands, of course, afterwards. And that's where I come into when I'm saying they're the gateway band. Without Metallica, a lot of people probably wouldn't really go into them. They're probably a play it safe type of band for at least the Black Album part of it, but if that's what it takes to get people to listen to this style of music, then that is really saying something about the musicianship on board with the band. So, Black Album, everyone, easily accessible, fantastic way to start off anyone who is a non-metal head on the path of going down there. So if you're tuning in and you really don't know metal too well, that is where you start. Go to the Black Album, play it loud. Now, I think it's interesting to also note, for example, Bruce Dickinson said this, and Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden. Bruce Dickinson said this about the Black Album. We're going to give them credit for grabbing the opportunity when it came up, taking the risk, and reaping the enormous rewards. Now, of course, this was the album where they shifted producers and went with Bob Rock, which is kind of controversial in itself. I mean, what the guy was doing, I think Motley Crue or something like that. I might be wrong, sorry. But anyway, he was producing various different styles of metal at the time, and everyone kind of had a raised eyebrow. Okay, you went with him? Alright then. And I mean, without Bob Rock's influence on the album, which he did have a massive influence, making a very polished record, changing their styles and perfecting this, and it's all basic rudimentary things at the end of the day. I don't think you would have that flawless album that is now. And I think it came out right at the perfect time. Like most successful albums, perfect timing is what it came down to. You could say the same about so many, like Nevermind, for example. Nevermind came out at the perfect time, hence why it is just regarded as a legendary album, sold millions of records. Black Album came out at a really opportune time when music styles were shifting away from thrash metal, glam rock is dying, and there's this new scene evolving out of it. Metallica would shift with the times. They would just go, alright, thrash metal's not really the style anymore that people want to listen to. We can see that. We're going to be making this a bit more accessible, more palatable, and they changed to go with that. And, let's face it, thrash metal died in the 90s. There's no denying that. For perfectionists and gatekeepers out there, there was a lot of shit coming out in the 90s from all the thrash bands. At the end of the day, there was just terrible stuff. The 90s metal scene shifted so much and went with different things. Other bands were doing the same thing that Metallica did and changed with them. Sepultura, for example, they shifted. They made groove metal. They followed in the steps, I guess, of like Pantera. And, Pantera were writing pretty heavy metal stuff around the time, like Cowboys and stuff like that. And, when they finally got away to like 5 Minutes Alone with all those songs, Walk and all that, obviously there's their shift. But before all this comes Metallica. It's like that gap, that bridge that goes from the 80s metal to the 90s metal. It's a perfect little bridge album that showed the transition of styles that was to come in regards to particularly early 90s stuff. So perfectly timed album and well produced, and they just sensed what was coming on at the time. You know, you can look at, for example, Iron Maiden's release around that time. Prayer for the Dying, I think, the same year that they released. Terrible album. You know, they knew that there was a change, and they tried to shift with the times, but they missed the mark, very much so. And again, you'll see where that comes up on the list for Iron Maiden's rankings at the end of the day. So, yes, there is Metallica's Black Album, which I've lauded over for ages and years, talking about how good it is, and of course all that jazz. So we can't go too far away from that. You know, there's a lot of things to take away from the Black Album. Now, the Black Album, of course, led to the 3-year tour that they went on. They became infamous for being called Alcoholica, made a lot of problems during this tour. Absolutely crazy time. It's all recorded and it's all available on Live Shit, Binge and Purge. I remember getting that DVD because it was an American version and I couldn't play it at the DVD because it was a region, area, blah, blah, blah. But the live recording, holy shit. The live recording is incredible. That is a freaking awesome record. And actually, I haven't gone back to that live record in ages, so I think I'm going to play that tonight. I remember getting the DVD box set, open it up, and it's got like the Metallica, you know, the two sticks, fingers up thing, the skull logo, and it was a sprayable one, so you know, you could have that logo sprayed on anything you wanted to. Yeah, let's give it up to graffiti, everyone. I mean, how many bridge underpasses have the word Metallica spray painted on the side of it? Now you can have a little skull logo this big next to letters 4 feet high. Yeah, more like public bathrooms. Oh man, I just remember seeing that. There was an underpass I drove through ages on the way to work and just seeing Metallica. And every time I'd be like, yeah, Metallica! So, oh yeah. Now, yes, the 3-year tour, of course, of Live Shit, Binge and Purge, it really shows the chaotic energy of the band, I guess, during an incredible time within the band itself. You know, there's just so much going on around this era of Metallica, and it led to probably their most famous, or one of their most famous, I should say, concerts they ever performed at, which is the Ticino Airfield concert. And this was the Monsters of Rock tour, and basically it's famous because 1991, the fall of USSR, and Russia is opening its borders to the first Western rock concert after the fall of communism. So there's this, oh wow, what's this type of thing, you know? And they knew of it, of course, but you know, it was really difficult to get the music. To get people access to the music. Is what I'm trying to say. So to just all of a sudden open the gates up to Western influence and then have these massive artists come over to perform, you know, a concert is anticipation beyond recognition. You know, you had in this lineup, you had AC/DC, Pantera, Motley Crue, the Black Crowes, and Queensryche. So massive lineup, incredible lineup, and you can go and check it out on YouTube. You've probably seen famous photos of the band just standing there with their guitars and just a sea of faces, and I really recommend check out the footage of the day, because you know, it's probably like a 20-minute little thing of the Airfield performance by Metallica with a couple of songs. It was pure chaos. If anything, it's like rock and roll to a T, because you know, the Ticino Airfield, they didn't really have security. So what do we do for security then? We're going to let all these young people get drunk on an airfield. We need security. Oh, wait, no. Let's hire the local army. So they get in all the reservists, and yeah, their security. By the way, we're just going to give all these army blokes wooden sticks to hit people with. So you got footage of like opening up the subway carriage and everyone ploughing out of the train station and just getting clobbered. And then, you go to the airfield where there's this 1.6 million people waiting to see the bands perform, in particular Metallica, because of course they're headlining. And, people are moshing and going crazy and getting absolutely nuts for this concert they really want to see. And the army doesn't know how to react, and they just start beating people up. It's beyond crazy. It's just... Yeah, you can draw parallels to that and recent events. I guess it's up to you, but I'm not going to make a comment. So yes, there's a lot of things that unfold when it came to that one in particular. One of my favourite concerts actually out of Metallica, and it's just it's crazy. Now, of course, beyond this, there are a few other concerts that are worth mentioning. There was one in France as well, which was on DVD. I've got a copy of that one. Great setting. Really good. I haven't watched that one in ages now, but yeah, absolutely incredible. They are also, I think there was one in Brazil as well, they just smashed like million people or something, or maybe I'm thinking of the Rolling Stones there, I might be getting mixed up. But Metallica, for another world record here, was the first band to tour all 7 continents. When they did the Freeze 'Em All tour in 2013, they went up to Antarctica to perform in a little base of scientists and stuff like that, I think. And I remember seeing the headlines about this. Metallica, first band to perform on all 7 continents. Here's the footage, and it's just like Metallica with a bunch of like parkas and like shit. I mean, you're talking about a place that's like minus 50 on a good day, and they're just standing there with like parkas and thick jumpers and stuff, and little fingers playing away probably 4 songs before they had to take a break. Their fingers would have froze off, and a whole bunch of scientists like looking over like, yes, there are perks to what I'm doing of ice core drilling. I mean, imagine that. Imagine telling your friends I've gone to study and be a scientist and I'm going to go to Antarctica for 6 months. Oh yeah, have fun with that one. Yeah, I'm going to core ice holes and stuff like that. We're going to discover ice that's been frozen for millions of years that, uncovers the history of the world. Oh, well, actually, did you know that Metallica is coming next week? What? But I want to go to core hole drilling. No, don't worry about that. Just Metallica. Oh yeah, you're right, because they're fucking awesome. So yeah, Metallica does 7 continents on the Freeze 'Em All tour. Because why not? I mean, Jamiroquai can do a concert up in an aeroplane. Then Metallica are going to do a tour on Antarctica. I can imagine polar bears just being like outside the ice station going like this. Creeping death, anyone? Oh man, as far as other famous records go, of course they worked with Michael Kamen for the S&M concert. Absolutely incredible performance. Symphony and Metallica, of course, San Francisco Symphony, doing famous renditions of their songs. And it was a real lightning in a bottle moment. Look, it wasn't the first time a rock band had worked with symphonic elements on a live performance. Go to Deep Purple for reference. It was the most famous one, I would say. There's symphonic metal, but for a metal band to go, hey, let's go look at our previous stuff and work with a symphony to redo it. That's just next level, And Michael Kamen, whose name might sound familiar to you guys out there. For example, he did a lot of work with other musicians and other movies and TV shows. So, for example, he worked with Roger Waters in 1990 on The Wall for the live performance when they tore down the wall. He worked a lot with Eric Clapton for a couple of live performances. So, that's a very interesting note as well for that one. So, I'm pretty, intrigued by Michael Kamen. He also did some soundtrack stuff for the movie Highlander, the first X-Men, I believe, License to Kill, that's the James Bond one with I might be wrong here, Timothy Dalton, I'm going to say. I think that was like the 87 flick with him. And of course, there was also the Lethal Weapon series. He did the back-end soundtracks for the Lethal Weapon series. So, the more you know, people, the more you know. Alright, now, as far as their back catalogue go, come at me when I say this, but the first 5 albums are perfect. You know, they're absolutely flawless from start to finish. You know, you can say what you want about it, but that is just pure perfection. I could listen to all 5 of them. If you said, go on an island for a year with 5 albums, and you gave me the first 5 Metallica albums, I could live comfortably. I could live very comfortably with that. It just shows their ability to write great songs, you know, in regards to their earlier material. And this does come back to what I was saying before. They had the world's best metal bass player in their band, with Cliff Burton, rocking peace, mate. But Cliff Burton, he was a fantastic bass player. If you are unfamiliar, again, I'm sure many people know of him, but Kill 'Em All had Anesthesia pulling on the teeth. And that is just Cliff Burton doing a random bass solo in the, you know, let's do a bass solo in the mix. And just on the fly, he's like a 3.5 minute solo. Absolutely incredible. And what he did for the band was really add the rhythm to them. So Metallica, to dive into the history, Metallica's history is just Lars and James, who met in like 1980 or 1981. You know, Lars had moved from, I think, Denmark to America around about this time. I mean, Lars actually features in a Motorhead album, in a photo, I should say. I think it was from the Rock and Roll album, where there's a young passed out Lars somewhere in the photos for that one. So he is also the biggest Motorhead fan. So I think he just followed Lemmy around throughout his tour in Europe and just pestered him. And he eventually, you know, became friends with Lemmy, and yeah, just had a drinking contest with him. And of course, you can't compete with God. So he failed and threw up everywhere. And then Lemmy turned around and was like, "Hey, let's take a photo of this. It'd be funny to put him in a record." So that's an interesting little note there. If you didn't know about that, check it out. Go back to Rock and Roll, open it up, and have a look. There's a passed out Lars there somewhere. Now, of course, they just write great songs. Sorry, Cliff Burton, he comes into the mix. Ron McGovney was the first bass player with Metallica. Didn't really cut it when they saw this orange mop of hair, and that's, I'm pretty sure, the exact quote Lars gave in an interview, just headbanging and performing a bass solo on stage one day. They're like, "We need him." So they got Cliff Burton into the mix. This is around about the time of Metal Militia, which is the demo. Metal Up Your Ass. That's what I meant to say. Metal Up Your Ass demo. I think around about this time they brought him in and finished up the mix of the songs. So he helped the band with a lot of rhythm. He was brought up, I think, on classical music from memory, so he knew about, you know, the way that rhythm works within music, and building up a crescendo, and, you know, all this stuff like that, and all the technical aspects, I guess, for songwriting. And when he worked with Lars and, you know, James in regards to songwriting, he would write absolutely incredible tracks. And I think it can be outlined on probably 2 or 3 tracks in particular. You had Orion, which kind of is his baby, from Master of Puppets, one they very rarely perform because it's usually saved for like tributes of Cliff, you know. So I think that song's been played like 12 times live in their career. I could be wrong, but, you know, if I'm wrong, let me know below. But yeah, the band, the other one as well, which I'll get into, was Call of the Cthulhu, you know, a 9-minute instrumental track. And yes, this involves Dave Mustaine, who was the other person I was going to mention here. So yeah, Dave Mustaine, he did, I'm not going to deny, he wrote a lot of music with Metallica. You know, the guy could, and the guy could clearly write music, and does to this day. Hell, The Good, the Dying, and all that. It's a pretty good album. Hell, Hangar 18, one of the best metal albums out there. Holy Wars and stuff like that. Just incredible stuff. So, I mean, in an alternative universe, I'm sure Cliff Burton and Dave Mustaine and James Hetfield and Lars would have been in a band together and probably been the absolute pinnacle of metal gods, So that, it unfortunately wasn't to be, and I think that's got to do a lot with Dave and Lars, because Dave's got the biggest ego you'll ever see, and of course Lars does too, so they're just butting heads. And that's probably noisy in the background at the moment, I'm sorry, but there is, I think, some roadworks going on. You might hear beeping and stuff like that. What a fantastic way to liven up this live stream, eh? Oh, people, get me away from the noise. So, look, Cliff Burton and Dave Mustaine, obviously prior members of Metallica, absolutely incredible songwriters, both of them. Cliff unfortunately passed away in 1986, and the band would move on with Jason Newsted. So, yes, the Dave Mustaine era of Metallica is an interesting one, to say the least. I think he gets like half the songwriting credits on Kill 'Em All, at least 1 or 2 or 3 tracks off Ride the Lightning, possibly one of them in Master of Puppets. But to what extent that was, and I'm sure mostly for legalities, they included him in Master of Puppets. But yeah, there's a lot to go into that one. So, yes, these albums in particular are just an absolutely fantastic piece. And anyone who's a gatekeeper of Metallica will say that is the ultimate path of them. Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, Justice. Maybe some won't say Justice, but those albums in particular, just next level. And it shows like the different styles that the band had. Kill 'Em All was this real thrashy, simplistic thrash metal kind of album. Ride the Lightning shows maturity within the band as they start to evolve and explore a bit of explore more rhythmic options and an acoustic piece, and that actually came out of dire consequences because their instruments were stolen and they had to go back to resorting on grandpa guitars for that one. So that's an interesting note when you go to listen to Fade to Black. So yeah, look, there's some interesting stuff in regards to that one. Obviously, Master of Puppets, probably the pinnacle of thrash metal albums, the best one that was ever made, at least to my mind anyway. If you made a list of like the top 10 or 20 or whatever thrash metal albums, it'd be Master of Puppets at number 1 for me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of people as well. So yeah, that album's just next level. It's just incredible. Actually, you know what? Lightning is probably a second place. I don't know. I think those two can be almost intermixed. But anyway, you move on from Master of Puppets, for example, to Justice, which showed the band getting complicated and just trying out some real experimental proggy stuff. So that's an interesting one. And of course you move on to, say, Black Album, getting more commercial, selling out, whatever. Just trying simplistic rock at the end of the day. Changing their style for the time and adjusting perfectly for it. The other thing as well you'll find in their back catalogue is the other albums as well, like Load and Reload, for example, which also adjusted for the times. They kind of got that old rock kind of sound going on. But at the same time, Fuel is an incredible track and always goes off live. So one of their best songs was written during that era. And I have a lot of fun memories about Load and Reload. There's a lot of tracks there where they changed the style up a bit and tried some stuff like Outlaw Torn. Ronnie wasn't too bad. Hero of the Day, and just all these songs out of Load and Reload are just masterclasses of songwriting again. Just a different style, that's it. At the end of the day, they shifted styles, and you can say whatever you want to say about selling out, but it was an interesting little mix the way they did it all. So, yeah, I love how they approached this and tried different things, and to me it paid off. I was 14 or 15 or something like that when I was buying Load and Reload and listening to it. So, of course, when you're young and impressionable, the music you listen to when you're that age stays with you forever at the end of the day. But, Load and Reload were really good albums. I mean, I just had the whole catalogue. I bought it all, and so for me it was just incredible. Even, I'm going to say something highly controversial here, even Saint Anger to a degree, I will defend, I can't. The only thing I can't defend though from that album is definitely the drums. Fuck the drums. Fuck them. Those trash can drums are just shit outs. But there's other albums out there as well with terrible production. That one is just the most accessible one that I can say, or the easiest one I think, with regards to that. Most of the songs are pretty average, but at the same time, Saint Anger was the first Metallica album that came out when I was listening to them, so I kind of have fond memories about Saint Anger. I remember trying to draw that clenched fist from the album cover, failing miserably at that, and just drawing the logo on every piece of paper that I found in school books and stuff like that. But when you look at it, I mean, the three tracks that spring to mind are, of course, the title track, Saint Anger. The Unnamed Feeling in particular is a huge, absolutely incredible track. Frantic isn't too bad either. The repetitiveness of Frantic, tick, 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 tock, might bring back some bad memories for people, but those are at least three tracks that I'm like, yeah, they're pretty good. And I think recently they're actually starting to play some of those tracks live. I think they started playing Saint Anger, which is interesting. Probably changing it up a little bit as well. I would love to hear the Unnamed Feeling live. I'm going to be that person that says it. So, I want to hear Unnamed Feeling perform live. I might be one of the only few people saying that. But at the end of the day, I think there's some songs on there that redeem parts of that album. Otherwise, yeah, most of it is pretty shit. But look, I mean, they're a band that own their past. They know they made a shit album at the end of the day. But whatever, they'll own up to it and say, yeah, fuck, we made a terrible album. The other interesting thing about their back catalogue is, of course, the album Garage Inc. To me, they're probably the only artist that I know of that has a good covers album. And what I mean by this is, there's lots of bands that have just released cover albums, but they're just shit. It just seems like selling out. Weezer, for example, just doing covers of stuff like Africa's Toto and stuff like that. And it's just like a quick buck. I think, who else? Was it Slayer maybe? I can't remember now. Yeah, Slayer I'm pretty sure did one as well. Probably trying to cash in around the time of, Garage Inc. and the fame that came with it. But Garage Inc. showed the band's ability to, I guess, redo famous tracks, but add their signature sound to it, which was a very interesting way to do it. And, they do it in such a way that you can still hear the original song, but it's enough that you recognise that it's a cover by Metallica. Take, for example, the argument that, what song can you think of that's been covered by an artist that is now theirs? The number one you can probably think of is like Bob Dylan's song that was covered by Jimi Hendrix, and All on the Watchtower, sorry, just had a mental blank on that. But, Jimi Hendrix did the cover of Bob Dylan's All on the Watchtower, and it's so synonymous with him that people think that he wrote it, but it was Bob Dylan. I'd make an argument that when Metallica did Garage Inc., they almost had the ability there to really own up some of their ones. In particular, Whiskey in the Jar. I have this, it was such a big hit at the time, and I remember people, before YouTube was a thing, there was like, what was it? I think it was Newgrounds or something like that. One of them websites where you had flash animation series and stuff like that, little 30-second or 1 minute videos. And there was like this tiny little screen of 360 by 240 resolution. And I remember someone did an animation in stick figure form to Metallica's Whiskey in the Jar. And I remember being in school and everyone of our, all the Metallica fans were watching this little animation of the stick figure doing the whole series to Metallica. The story behind, Thin Lizzy's, well, that's even the cover itself, but of Whiskey in the Jar, which is a famous tale, I think, from an old folk song. So, to me, Whiskey in the Jar is a song that has been covered by Metallica and is now made famous by them. They own pretty much the cover in the way that Jimi Hendrix owns All on the Watchtower. So, that's disc one. There's 2 discs. There's 2 discs in Garage Inc. And I think what also made it fairly interesting is the fact that the 2 discs are recorded in different eras. So you had the $1.99 era, which was 1989. I think it was recorded, a whole bunch of songs. And then you had the ones that were recorded in like 1997, 98 era, when they did covers of Nick Cave, many other artists. Bob Seger, I think, was on there as well, and a few other things, Black Sabbath, all them kind of artists, and it really added to it, because obviously the production was there, it was crisp, it was a really good album to, get your hands on. Fantastic little comeback album, if you will, in particular, and it just showcased the ability that Metallica have to just own something. So yes, the album, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find myself here on Garage Inc. Free speech for the dumb, it's electric, Sabracadabra, turn the page and stuff like that. So yeah, there was even Blue Oyster as a cult, I think, Astronomy, and all these bands. And the biggest takeaway I remember from Garage Inc. is when you go back, you're listening to these, and it's a covers album. You had a book, and it was a really thick book as well. And they really discussed all these bands and all the influences that they had on them. And they, without Garage Inc., there's a lot of bands that I wouldn't have discovered until much later on. Because Doz and me, we played that album so much, and because of these songs, we discovered more music. We discovered Motorhead. We went out and bought their CDs, or in particular he did, and then I just borrowed them. But, we were listening to the Garage Inc. and we're like, oh, who's Motorhead? Oh, yes, okay, let's go out and buy their CDs. And next second we did, and then next second we're Motorhead fans. Oh, well, okay, what about Am I Evil? Again, there's another cover you could almost say there. But Diamond Head. Who's Diamond Head? Let's go out and get the White Album. That's an absolutely banger album. Again, a flawless album. Black Sabbath. Without Garage Inc., all these artists I'm naming, I wouldn't have discovered until much later on. But Motorhead, Diamond Head, Black Sabbath, King Diamond, Thin Lizzy, all of these guys are just, I remember going out, listening to them, and then going, oh my god, this is a trip. This is an absolute trip. I just get to go down and hear all this plethora of good music. And it's nuts. It is crazy. Even to this day, I think there was a cover of, I can't remember the song, but it was by Budgie, which is like a Scottish rock group. And they did a song of theirs, I can't remember. I think it was Free Speech for the Dumb. No, that was Discharge, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, they did a song, and I remember hearing the Budgie version, and then I went and checked out Budgie only a couple of years ago, and I heard the song Guts, which is this really deep bass line. It's just, it's like a sludge fest. It's such a weird track for the 70s, but it's so good. It is such a good track. So even now I still discover stuff from Garage Inc. So that's another thing as well into itself, and it kind of also bleeds into more recently I should say, when Metallica did the 30th anniversary for the Black Album, that other bands come into the mix. So Metallica's doing a 30th anniversary rather than just remastering the album, pushing out a bunch of live tracks on it, and then saying, well, that's a day, give me money. They say, alright, let's reach out to some more modern musicians to do covers of our songs. You know, let's make it worth it, because why not? So they reach out to all these musicians, and by the way, I've covered every single track from the Black Album's 30th anniversary on a little series. So I've covered that in a few episodes. I've split the episodes up into certain tracks. Some were combined because there was only a couple of artists, or one or two artists who covered one track. But for example, Enter Sandman had 12 artists I think covering it. So, when you go into look at the 30th anniversary like I did, I discovered a lot of musicians. To any of the old fans in particular, you're probably going to start discovering new music as well through the Black Album one. And for me, it was bands like The Chats, The Who, and that's the Mongolian throat-singing rock group HU, The Who. I have to keep saying that every time. Mac DeMarco was another one. Obviously, there was Ghost on there. I knew of Ghost, but some people may not have. And when I heard it and discovered the band Ghost, there was Volbeat as well. Interesting one there. Tommy Owo, just an interesting little pop artist for that one. Chris Stapleton, I knew of him, but when I heard this album, I really ventured into his rock, and oh god, he's such a great artist. Fuck, he's such an amazing artist. Another one as well was Trezor. Pretty sure that was this Afrobeats kind of style musician, and just really smooth pop side that I don't even know how to describe. It's like sensual pop, just an incredibly sleek production. So a lot of these artists I would just check into, and I'll start playing and go like, shit, this is good shit, and I'm starting to discover newer artists. So between Garage Inc. and I guess Metallica's 30th anniversary of the Black Album, you've got all these artists, sorry, I could probably make the analogy like this. So you got all of these artists here, and at the end of the day, Metallica is this part. This is the tree, and you have Garage Inc. with the roots of all the artists that made Metallica, the stuff that they listened to, and then you've got the Black Album and the cover, and they are the tree, these are the roots, they're the branches. All these musicians come together through Metallica, because why not? I mean, there's so much music that I've discovered through Metallica, and so many musicians who have done the same and then been influenced by Metallica at the end of the day. It's just nuts. What is it, like 55 songs? I think 55 artists. Big names on there as well, like, and Weezer and stuff like that. Of course, we're not talking about going and getting, hey, let's get King Diamond to, cover our music. Yeah, it'd be interesting, I guess, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'd rather be hearing some fresher vocal patterns to it. It'd be interesting for them to be doing a cover of, I don't know, Nothing Else Matters, but but I think they approached it right. It might have ruffled some feathers, but at least they're trying something different with that one. So, very interesting to have them in regards to that. Even, and as far as like the recent music goes, I mean, you can really put them into three parts. You had their thrash metal section in the 80s, you had their famous section of the 90s, and even now post Saint Anger with like the resurgence almost, Death Magnetic onwards. And Death Magnetic was the album that they needed to write to kind of come back to reality. It was a back to roots thrash metal piece that they needed to do. But then you had Hardwired to Self-Destruct, and I feel like that's when the band's kind of like, we know what we're doing now. They've got a finer idea, and they know how to act. They know how to work with Robert a bit more, and he's come out of his shell a bit. And Hardwired to Self-Destruct was such a good album. It's phenomenally good. And I know Doz hasn't listened to it. Shame on you for not listening to that, Doz. If you have, message me. But, that is an incredible album. Now, the other thing as well for it is the fact that all these albums still kicking ass after all of this time is just legendary unto itself. And Metallica is going to be coming out with their newest album very soon. It's coming up in the it'll be coming out, in a couple of months is what I meant to say. So 72 Seasons is the newest album that'll be coming out on the 14th of April, I believe. It's going to be an interesting one, to say the least. I've done 2 reactions to their newest ones, Like Say Turner and the other track. I think you released it the other day, and I keep forgetting the fucking name for that because I'm an idiot. But Screaming Suicide, which I released only yesterday as well. I was pumping that actually earlier today, and I'm starting to grow a bit more fond of it. My reaction might be tempered, I guess. I was a bit distracted as well towards the end of that reaction, but I'm growing more fond of that song. Like Say Turner is really good. I love that track, instantly loved it, but Screaming Suicide kind of took a bit of more listening, and I'm definitely going to be playing that one later on. But I think there's also another interesting thing that Metallica are trying Metallica are doing an interesting little thing for their album release, which is they will be premiering the album worldwide in selective cinemas on the 13th of April. So Google your nearest cinemas to find out where the bloody hell you can listen to the album in full with a bunch of Metallica fans, because that's going to be quite the experience. I've seen a couple of I've seen quite a few live performances in concerts when they've done their limited runs. For example, I know Dosme went and saw Nirvana when they had a little run with the Live at the Muddy Banks or whatever it was album. And to be able to sit in a cinema with a bunch of people who are enjoying this music, and obviously the music pumping, is quite the experience. You're not going to get, of course, it's not concert level experience, but it's still quite an experience to be able to sit there and everyone's like, yeah, pump it, man. It's really cool. So I kind of really would like to go out and do that. Sit there in the cinema and listen to it with a bunch of Metallica fans and throw popcorn in the air when they go live. But it's going to be an interesting one. I really would like to see how that happens as well. Are they going to talk before the thing starts? Are they going to perform it live? Is it going to be streamed on multiple platforms? Is it? I don't know. I don't know how it is. Or is it just here's the studio album and we're playing it? So that's interesting. I don't know what they're going to go with. I hope they do it live, because that would be cool to sit there in the cinemas shit, it's 2 a.m. here, but in America, I'm sure it's the right time for them. So, yeah, this is the 5th album produced with Greg Feidelman. I don't know if I've pronounced that right. Anyway, but Greg Feidelman, 5th album along the line. So they, he did, what was it, Death Magnetic, I think, onwards. So, of course, he did S&M 2, the live album, the acoustic one, live, All Within Our Hands, I think it was, or something like that. And this is his 5th one. And, he's an interesting producer. He's been an engineer for a lot of musicians and stuff like that, such as with Johnny Cash during the Americana series, Slipknot's Volume 3, System of a Down's debut album, the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication. Obviously, he works a lot with Rick Rubin, and now as a producer in the last couple of years coming out onto his own. So, I feel that's going to be safe in the way of production for sound, because Hardwired to Self-Destruct was just a beautiful sounding record, So I think we're going to be safe there. At least no more Bob Rock. Fuck, that guy can't produce an album for shit. I can't remember what was the more recent album I reviewed, but it sounded horrible, and I was wondering why. And this is a big name artist now. I want to say it was Def Leppard. I can't remember now, but there was an album recently that was... No, it wasn't Def Leppard. It was The Offspring. That's who it was. Bob Rock just seems to have this ability to write produced, shit records. You know, I know he's worked with the Offspring for years now, but the more recent album they put out, it just sounded like arse. And I remember listening to it going, fuck, why is this so bad? Oh, it's Bob Rock, he's lost his marbles. He has for the last 2 decades. You know, damn, that guy can't fucking produce an album to save him. So, yeah, 72 seasons, people, 12 tracks on the upcoming album. My guess would be there'll be one more single before the album drops, because that's how record industries work. There's always 3 singles, then the freaking album comes out. And I mean, you can see the album's tracks if you were on iTunes. It's just not. It's accessible to view, but you just can't play, obviously. So you can see all the track names from that there. You can check up on Wikipedia too, because it's all there. But my guess, reading through the titles, I'm probably going to say the title track 72 Seasons is going to be the next single. I don't know. Maybe they've released a note and they've said what they're going to release, but I haven't looked at it. I'm guessing 72 Seasons will be the one they release. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks, because that'll be out in, say, 6 or 7 weeks. So, everyone, this is my reasons for why Metallica is the best metal band ever. You know, they can write hell good tunes that are just catchy earworms. You know, Master of Puppets, for example, an absolute banger that was used in Stranger Things. And I remember, like, everyone was just wanting to play Master of Puppets after that. And, I mean, I didn't think I was going to say this, but I remember after Stranger Things and people getting more, back into Metallica after that, there was that YouTuber who came out and said, oh, we should cancel Metallica because of X, Y, Z. And that caused a lot of controversy, because Metallica's one of the most popular bands ever. Why should we fucking cancel them? Yeah, look, obviously separate the musician from the music. You know, I'm not going to agree with everything that every musician ever does just because I love their music. You can see Ted Nugent as a perfect example for that. You know, the guy is a dumbass, but I love him as a musician. Oh my god. But yeah, you know, like, what did that achieve? I couldn't even tell you the YouTuber's name, but people still love and hear Metallica. Just a bit of clickbait at the end of the day for them. So, yeah, look, Metallica, earworms after earworms, man. And 72 Seasons is surely going to be another one. You know, can't wait to hear it. Really want to hear that. And you bet I'm going to be doing an extended review with that one. You better believe that. Because Doz and me, we're going to come in with that. And I hope that when I catch up with Doz somehow in regards to reviewing that album, we'll finally be able to make our list of Metallica albums ranked. And hopefully we can do it with that one in mind as well. So, people, that is my little rant of the day. Look at that. It's about 70 minutes long. Didn't know if I was going to be able to go for 40 minutes or not, but Jesus, did I rant on and rave and go mad in the process. I'm just impressed that I've talked for this long and done so flawlessly, or at least what I thought. I'm probably more impressed about the album artwork in regards to this cover photo. It does look good, doesn't it? I'm figuring out how to do graphic cards. Yeah, Canva helps a lot too. So, I'm finally figuring out this live streaming BS. Hopefully we can have some even live stream guests for the future. So keep an eye out, of course. Hopefully the Def Leppard episode is next week, guys. We'll check that one out. As always, people, hope you've enjoyed this one. Hey, Andy, if you made it this far, congratulations. Hey, dude. Thank you very much for tuning in for another episode of Live Listen Race live streams in regards to this one. You know, we're going to go crazy and do this. Now I'm going to go order a pizza because I'm hungry. Hope you have a great day, everyone. Stay spicy.